He's an absolute magician. He's set up for...
Hello and welcome to another episode of Troy Nunes is an Absolute Livestream. With me as always, Andy Pregler and DeGuzman. Steve Haller here. How are we doing, guys?
Pretty good, Steve. We're still trying to figure out if there are more Boeheims or if there are more Coonies in this world, but, I digress.
The limit.
Right. We have all the imaginary Cooney brothers, and we have all the real Boeheim brothers on the Syracuse basketball roster, apparently.
To quote the cinematic masterpiece, Mean Girls, the limit does not exist.
Well, this has already started out to be a hell of a podcast.
All right, thank you, everyone, guys, for watching. We'll see you next week.
All right. We're signing off. We'll see you in a week.
I'm sorry.
Holy cow. All right. So we've been there, and, I guess, we were going to ease into the elephant in the room, but screw it. Let's go right off the bat. What are we going to do with James Arthur Boeheim and James Arthur Boeheim on the same court?
We are going to screw up the James Arthur that we are talking about so many times. And Christian, I know that you write a lot of basketball recaps. I know James is like our resident basketball, writes 10 million articles when the season rolls around. Man, I want to see the AP style guide for what happens when the coach and the player have the same name. Like, what?
This was me writing this article because not only do you have the coach and the player have the same name, you have the coach and two players with the same name. Right. And the great thing that came up throughout our comment section on Twitter is not what happens when we write about it. That's hard enough. What happens when the ACC network guys sit down and try to call this game? And Boeheim passes to Boeheim, and Boeheim is livid. He's yelling, but Boeheim makes the shot somehow, and Joe Girard goes to the bench. So...
No, all right, we know you're living in a fantasy land already. So
that's true.
Yeah.
That is true.
So I think that there's a lot of jokes to be made, and oh my gosh, I'm gonna warn everybody here. The Boeheim jokes are how we're gonna get through the offseason. Okay, like Nunes already gets a little wonky in the offseason. This is the basketball gods said, you guys went through a very bleak season that ended in a weird Sweet 16 run. Let's give you a very weird offseason to have some fun with.
What are you talking about? Steve and I are going to turn the blog into an esports site. So.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Okay.
And I'm going, as you'll know by the end of the podcast, I'm going full soccer too. So we're good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is actually fair. I can't wait until we do the bags of cash game that is on Twitter. We will also get into that at a later show. For those of you who are super college football online, you'll understand that. For those who are not, we'll explain it later. But for now, on the actual basketball side of things, James Arthur Boeheim the Jr., not the second, Jr., is joining the Syracuse Orange basketball team. He is 6'9", 240 pounds. He is coming in as a somewhat more athletic 4, undersized 5, and oh my gosh, when has Syracuse ever had one of those and forced them to play the 5 before? Gosh, I don't know. The reality of the situation is that he is one of 3 front court guys that we currently have on the roster. The other 2 are Barama Sidibe, who had an infection in his knee. Get to that in a second.
Apparently? Question mark?
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. And Jesse Edwards, who are both centers. Unless Quincy Guerrier returns.
Oh, Frank Anselm.
Oh, yes, Frank Anselm.
Is Chaz Owens technically a front court guy?
He's somewhere.
He is a perfect swing. We're going to have 2 Boeheims playing 38 minutes a night.
No, 40.
That's actually
it's 40. Let's
Are we counting Girard as a Boeheim?
3. Yeah.
And I mean, their longtime teammate will be the one spelling them from the AAU circuit. So
yeah.
Everybody's going to get the Boeheim name. We're good.
Yeah. I think the only thing that I can take away with this without just laughing hysterically is that Jimmy Jr. Oh, wow, that's weird. Jimmy Jr. gives us a opportunity to at least have that semi-athletic 4 role that Marek did really well at filling and kind of fits in the offense that we've seen. Now, again, this guy hasn't played basketball in over a year. Christian, I don't know. There's some upside here. This was just way too predictable. So, like, we've all been sitting on this for a while. Like, what are the actual non-joke expectations that we should be putting on this kid who's transferring from Cornell?
That's a great question. And also, now that you brought up that he kind of could be Marek, you're now faced with a very possible situation that he slides in for Sidibe under the 5 instead of Edwards, which is, like, exactly what's going to happen next year. And I think there's no beating around the bush. That's probably going to happen. And Kevin brought this point up a lot during the week, and I tend to agree with him. I think you guys agree with me as well. Yes, he is going to be a bit more athletic than maybe who we have on the roster, but that's not saying much. It's not a particularly athletic team in a system that demands a lot out of their players on both sides of the ball. I mean, it's pretty free-flowing on offense because Boeheim lets the guys do what they want on offense. But on defense, it's still taxing. The 2-3 zone, like, demands a lot out of you every single play, and that's why, Syracuse gives up so many second chance points all the time. So
yeah, and I know.
Yeah,
go for it.
So it's tough to see when you have. I think it's 50-50 on whether Guerrier comes back, but if he doesn't come back, the wings become incredibly inexperienced because you're going to start a combination of Jimmy Boeheim, Cole Swider, and Benny Williams. And do they necessarily have the athleticism that's going to be needed to pick up the 2-3 zone quickly in order to mitigate some of the, over rotation and then open threes that will never come? Because that's essentially what happened with Alan Griffin. Like, he couldn't, and he might be a bit more athletic than Swider and Boeheim. And he was still prone to over rotations and leaving guys open. And if the basketball IQ isn't there, especially the basketball IQ you need to run the 2-3 zone, the athleticism better be there. I'm not sure it's quite there for all three of those guys.
And of note, if people didn't realize, earlier in the week, said Griffin decided to transfer.
No, not transfer.
No, not
he
transfer.
He is going pro.
Or no, declared for the draft. Declared for some sort of pronus.
And unlike Guerrier, he is expected to sign with an agent, so he's definitely not coming back.
I would assume he probably just didn't want to go through the transfer portal mess again. Already having been through it once, so
having a dad as a professional coach probably helps out with this process a little bit more.
Yeah, he knows what he's getting into. So just like when I had a very strong opinion when Jeremy Grant declared for the draft, I was like, he's got literally the best people that could possibly be telling him what to do. Like, his dad is a former NBA champion, or his uncle's a former NBA champion, his dad's a former NBA player. Like, I think he knows what he's getting into.
I mean, it's the NBA also. I'm staunchly a NBA, also known as the no defense league guy. So, like, that's not necessarily needed in the NBA, and he's a good enough shooter where he'll land somewhere because of his shot.
He might also be fine when he doesn't have to, like, play a very specific zone role where he's overcompensating for guards that don't necessarily do their jobs either. You're telling me they don't play the NBA? They play the zone in the NBA? I mean, look what happened with the Miami Heat. It worked so well for them.
Yeah, here we go. But speaking of the NBA, another side note, O'Shea Brissett did sign a 10-day contract with the Pacers. So he's continuing on his NBA
trajectory. He dropped 10 points in his first game, and, like, the Pacers are not good, but they're not necessarily, like, bad either. So the fact that he's getting a 10-day look with them does say something.
Yep.
And I think, again, we just keep not trying to harp on things that we've said before, but, like, this is probably the first year that Syracuse doesn't have a first-round draft pick going, which is something, because O'Shea was part of that lineage of guys who might, we kind of questioned maybe when they were leaving, but they got drafted. They showed they had pro potential. This roster was bereft of that level of talent, and we're now trying to supplement a lot of good players leaving with a lot of transfers that didn't pan out at their last. Jimmy Jr. is actually probably the best player coming in terms of
by the
performance.
numbers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
at performance at his last
again,
school.
and that's by the numbers because he was the guy. He was the guy who was taking the majority of the shots for Cornell
Right.
back in the 2019-20 season. How is his efficiency when you don't give him the ball every single position? Because I mean, the numbers aren't like it's only 43% from the floor and 29.5% from three in his junior year in Cornell. His three-pointer is actually higher his sophomore year. So maybe he has a three that supplements some of that as well. But like, it's an offense where you know where the ball is going to most of the time. It's going to the backcourt. It's going to Boeheim and Gerard, because that's and by Boeheim I mean Buddy Boeheim. Here we go again. So it's going to Buddy. It's going to Joe. We know that. Like, we saw that happen last year, and it's going to happen again this year. Even if Jimmy, even if Brahma / Jesse, even if Benny Williams like turn out to be very efficient offense options in the bottom in the paint, we know the ball's still going outside. So how does everyone else do in their limited touches? Because we saw what happens when Marek and Quincy don't finish when they get their touches. It usually ends up badly.
Right. Now, and I guess it goes. I keep going back to, and I was one of the ones with Kevin harping on the athleticism of the global team. Like, you can make the argument that the starting five with Benny coming in and, you know, a couple of shifts here and there, subbing in Jesse Edwards for Barama's broken knees, could ultimately, you know, be a wash for athleticism in the starting five. However, when you look at the global, like the whole roster, without Quincy coming back, this team definitively drops a peg. And how they make up for that, and how they, I guess, for one, you know, how do they spread the floor to give some space for the backcourt to operate? You know, Jesse's not going to be a stretch five like Marek was. Like, he's not moving out of the paint. That's where he's going to be. So you know the guards aren't driving. What's that going to ultimately do to the flow of the offense when you can't, like, you don't have to respect the ISO. You don't have to respect everybody clearing out of the paint.
And not just the guard, and not just the guards, but the forwards as well. Because like,
right,
I haven't disclaimer, I haven't seen too much tape on the new guys coming in. But what if like Benny Williams and Jimmy Boeheim are more of those put the ball on the floor type of guys? Like you said, with Marek, it's easier because you can kind of stretch him out on the floor, even though he wasn't too much of a threat from range. Like, he was still able to stretch the floor, especially with his passing and his, you know, and that point forward mentality. And that opened.
You had to respect him at least out to 20.
And that opened up the paint for Buddy and then maybe Quincy from time to time to, you know, make a backdoor cut, something like that.
Yep.
For Kadari to, you know, drive the paint. Unfortunately, we don't have Kadari, but that's another topic. Like, those important aspects, because we saw it last year how effective and efficient Syracuse was when they drive to the basket. How does that change now when Barama and Jesse are playing more and more and more?
Yeah, that's going to be. This is going to be one of those standard Boeheim offseason puzzles. Boeheim the Elder offseason puzzles that he's going to have to find a way to figure out, and we're not going to know a goddamn thing until November.
There is zero way.
And if you want to open up the paint and bring out Barama and you want to bring out Jesse, that means, like I said at the beginning, that brings up the scenario of Jimmy potentially playing the 5.
And I think that it's gonna happen more than we want to admit it's gonna happen. Like, I just don't see a way around Jim Senior. Oh gosh, Jim Senior saying, hey, Sidibe's knee suddenly has a second infection, or tinnitus has tendonitis has made its return, and he's unavailable, and I don't trust Frank in this. It's not Frank. Wow, that is a. I'm just.
No, I wouldn't trust Frank.
Yeah.
I really want to trust Frank in the limited time we saw him,
but
I guarantee Boeheim won't trust
Frank. Side note, if we're having this much trouble with the Boeheims, imagine how Sean McDonough is feeling and what Sturm is feeling, when they're about to call Syracuse games.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, this is just going to be this is going to throw everything off. I meant to say Jesse Edwards because, again, he didn't trust Jesse Edwards down the stretch of a win or go home game. So I don't know. I just feel like this team, we've done all this shit. We've moved deck chairs on the Titanic. We've done a lot of player movement in, a lot of player movement out. What are we left with? A team that has 2 veteran inefficient guards, some question marks at the stretch, an undersized 5, and how the heck is this team going to be consistent on offense?
And that, my friends, is why come next November, somehow we're going to find a team that actually works, and we're all going to be sitting here like, what the hell happened? Because looking at this roster, everybody's like, I don't know what's going on.
No, because the inevitable.
It's going to be one of those.
The inevitable thing is Syracuse is going to get an 11th seed again. They're going to go to the Sweet 16 again, and everyone is going to tweet 3 Boeheims. What? No!
If you thought that the Buddy Fluff pieces were bad, wait till the Jimmy and Buddy Fluff pieces come through.
Yep, it'll be fun.
This is when Jamie announces her transfer from Rochester to Syracuse, and then that's when it just everything just goes on fire.
Oh yeah.
And again, if this was a regular head coach, we would be saying, "Oh man, this is when he's gearing up for the farewell tour. He's got his kids playing under him. He's, they're both looking to graduate. Like this could be the year that he says goodbye." But because it's Jim Boeheim, doesn't matter if this is his last year. He's still going to say that he's going to play until the moment that he just doesn't show up on the first day of practice, and that's how you know Jim Boeheim is retired.
Oh yeah, 100%. He's going to be that guy in your office that just ghosts one day and you have no idea. You're like, oh, looks like Bob retired. All right, cool.
We laugh and joke because this is really the only logic that we have to explain this entire situation.
Yep.
Welcome to Syracuse.
Speaking of no logic.
The ticking time bomb of that is Syracuse.
Yeah. Speaking of no logic, let's do a quick hit on a game we're all going to want to forget.
Christian...
Christian,
tell me why we don't talk lacrosse on this show.
The less we talk about this, the better. So, let's bring up our favorite thing again. Off-ball defense. Syracuse actually was about 44% on our face-offs. Not great, but considering where they've been the past couple of weeks, not horrible. So if you told me coming into this game for Syracuse versus North Carolina that Syracuse would be 44% on face-offs, go SU, that'd be okay. But North Carolina is an extremely aggressive team off ball. And as Paul Carcaterra always says on the broadcast, you're only defending the guy on ball 1/6 of the time. The other 5/6 of the time, you have to be paying attention, especially in lacrosse, where open looks are at a premium. Like Syracuse's defenders are usually very good on ball defenders. And it's rare, but it happens because it's lacrosse, that they'll get beat. And usually they'll get beat maybe 2, 3, 4 times a game. So the other 17 goals that North Carolina scored, most of those were from off-ball defenders just not paying attention. So, first of all, that can't happen on defense. That's how North Carolina put up 21 goals. But you should also expect Syracuse to put up more than 9. And part of that is because UNC has one of the better goalies in the ACC, Colin Krieg, 13 saves on 21 shots. I mean, that's pretty good. And if he hasn't cemented himself as a front runner for ACC Freshman of the Year, he has now. And Syracuse was just sloppy on offense. And I mentioned that in the Albany game, that they were sloppy and there were some turnovers. And it happened again because there were just some bad turnovers that were forced. And then the shots that they were selecting were just not that great because it seemed like even though Krieg is a great goalkeeper, he found the way to the ball pretty easily. So all in all, it was just not a showing that was indicative of a team that is branded Syracuse, which is just not good. And like I said, Syracuse needs, unless something changes within the next couple of weeks, Syracuse needs to win one of its last 2 games. And they're both on the road. And they're both against Virginia and Notre Dame, who in the past polls were ranked 2 and 3.
Christian, this seems like this is fine GIF in Syracuse lacrosse form.
Oh yeah, I mean if you couldn't choose a more perfect point in this season, it's right now.
So I guess the question becomes, we know that Syracuse can beat anybody. We also know that they can get they can get run off the field by anybody. What is the scenario on which they make the tournament at this point? Like, which of these 2 games left on the schedule is more likely to be the win that they need?
I want to say, God, that's a great question. Maybe Virginia because you beat them already before. But the reason I'm saying that is because this is such a drastically different team, a drastically different Virginia team that we're seeing than what we saw from Virginia back in February when Syracuse beat them pretty easily. This is not the same Virginia team, and it's hard to find a weakness from the other teams. And I mainly just say Virginia because their defense isn't as good as Notre Dame's, potentially. But that Virginia offense is now clicking again because Doc Zekin has finally got it going. Matt Moore and Ian Laviano are 2 of the best. Connor Schellenberger is, still going strong for Virginia. Maybe their second midfield line falters a little bit, so maybe it's Virginia. But Notre Dame, who is still rolling with Pat Cavanaugh and their 2 Fogos and Liam Enterman in goal for them. It's tough to see Syracuse beating Notre Dame. It's more likely, in my mind, they'll beat Virginia, but even that's a big if, because Pete LaSala is back to his best Fogo numbers, even though Fop beat him last time, and that was and that.
You remember, if I'm trusting my memory on this, that was because he got away with going early on just about every faceoff. Mm-hmm.
And Anish Shroff, ESPN's Anish Shroff, got a text from an ACC assistant who had watched the tape of that Syracuse-Virginia game, and that assistant had said that Fop might have been going early on some of those faceoffs. So you're assuming that won't happen again, especially when the game's in Charlottesville.
Yeah.
It just all seems like, man, this is not good.
So the bad news would be if Syracuse doesn't make the tournament, if Syracuse doesn't make the tournament, and from the last 2 games it very could likely be, it will be the first time they've missed a tournament since 2007, which is not great. But luckily, the good news is that the following 2 years they won the tournament. So maybe that is signs for greener grass on the horizon. But in the immediacy, it's just not looking good.
Right, and I think the frustrating part is that this was supposed to be the green grass year. Like, this was the year coming off of last year's, oh my gosh, they can do this, they're running it back with almost everybody, and clearly that's not necessarily what's happened. So I think, obviously, the gravestone is not in the ground yet. There's still 2 games left to be played. A lot can happen. But, man, the retrospective on this season is going to be something else if they do inevitably end up missing the tournament. And even if they do get into the tournament, the fact that it was this close is going to be something else. So, I feel like we're at the halfway point. And you know what's almost as painful as Syracuse men's lacrosse? Indiana basketball offering Brad Stevens $70 million to be the head coach, and he's saying no. Hi, Connor at Home Field Apparel. We don't hate Indiana basketball as much as you do. Connor, founder of Home Field Apparel, is a diehard Indiana basketball Hoosiers fan. The Indiana Hoosiers are not a good team. They needed a new head coach. They wanted their chosen son, Brad Stevens, to come back and do it. He said, nah, I'm good. And instead, Connor has decided to make very comfortable T-shirts to cover up for his sorrow. And I will not lie, they're very comfortable. His tears make wonderful T-shirts.
And you're wearing one of my favorites currently.
The vintage weird S logo that I don't really know what to call this, but besides the vintage weird S logo.
Yeah, I just go with the 90s S. But yeah, I mean, overall, Home Field Apparel, any college you really want is probably feeling some home field magic at this point. So, in our case, we are Troy Nunes as an absolute magician. We are Syracuse Orange fans. If you would like your Syracuse Orange merch to have 10% off of it, use the code NUNES10, and you can get said 10% off of it.
It's a really simple process. The T-shirts are great. The hoodies are great. The pullovers are great. The joggers are not in stock, but they are great. So, yeah.
Still pining for the auto joggers, buddy. Still want the auto joggers.
You just have to tweet at Connor incessantly for 3 months straight, and cyberbullying actually works. Do not let Michelle Obama tell you otherwise.
Good work, no escalators.
Yeah, no escalators has quickly become... I don't like that I follow them, but I do like that their content typically brings me to laughter at least once a day.
Oh, 100%.
It is.
100%.
I don't like giving any UConn fans props.
Half the time it's at expense of us, but...
Right. That is unfortunately accurate. So, that's Home Field Apparel. They're great. They keep sponsoring us, so you should go buy some stuff. Nunes 10 for 10% off Surfing Anteaters or Syracuse shirts, whichever you may prefer. Mm-hmm. Gentlemen, that was not good. That men's lacrosse piece was not good. There was good news on the women's front on both basketball and lacrosse. Let's start with basketball. The WNBA draft was this week, and while Tiana Mahakakia did not get drafted, she did almost, I want to say almost immediately after the draft ended, had a contract in hand, which makes me think that, not that this was all preordained, but that basically teams reached out to her and said, okay, we're probably not going to draft you, but here's our contract offer. And she got to pick out of a few different offers. And she chose the Phoenix Mercury, who were a mediocre team last year. They went 13-9. They drafted a center with their draft pick, so they clearly did not get any backcourt competition for her. It seems like a somewhat positive move for her, and I'm just genuinely happy that Tiana will get to continue her professional career.
Absolutely. And she... I don't know how the competition will go, but she is in a comfortable spot under Sandy Brondello, who is a former Australia international for basketball, fellow countryman, and it's a good spot for her to land in if she's not going to get drafted. I think it might have been, how in the NFL draft, towards the end, there's the off the books talks of, we're not going to take you, but we're going to give you a call immediately after, or the agents are like, oh, we're not going to take you so you can sign with this guy who's better than the fit you would have had there and been required to play for, so do that. I think you might have gotten into something like that too, where somebody who wanted her or wanted to at least see her in camp might have gotten some FaceTime there and been like, hey, we'll figure something out. So hopefully she keep playing.
And this is Phoenix that still has Zion Taurasi on it, so it's a pretty good and WNBA legend to learn under.
I'd say that's, if you're gonna hit the names, that's right up there.
And they do still have Brittany Griner, and I will say this: we know that Tiana can run an offense where she's just chucking it up to the biggest person on the court.
Yeah, that'll work. Also, Skylar Diggins from Notre Dame, who I remember watching Syracuse play against. So
yeah, she's very good as well. So I don't think, and again, Tiana only signed a camp invite, so there's still an opportunity where she might end up on a different team because the fit just isn't there. She doesn't do enough in camp to hang on. But it does seem like a situation where Phoenix is going, we kind of want to start planning for the future. Let's get this very young, very talented, high ceiling point guard learning from some of the best in the game to develop, take a couple of years to just get her health back to where it was pre everything that she went through, and 2, learn the game at a level from the very best that I've ever played it. I think in general, it ends up being a really good fit for her. There was some other positive news with the women's basketball front. They had a lot of transfers going out. They're starting to get some transfers coming in. There was a new transfer who came in. I know she's from the University of Arizona. That's about it.
No, she's not.
Oh, I am
She's
wrong.
a former Sun Devil from Arizona State University.
Oh, geez.
Also known as the Tony White transfer.
Ah, yes.
Arizona State to Syracuse.
And Andy has pissed off half of our Arizona listener population, which is not many, but still they're pissed off.
Thankfully, the population is probably at 0, so you pissed off half of 0. I'm not a math guy. I'm pretty sure you're fine.
That's undefined. If I've learned anything by dividing by 0.
Thank you.
Thank you, AP Cal.
I put us into an existential crisis. That is what I have to.
There we go. So Ebony Walker is the transfer in, forward from Arizona State. I believe this actually fills out the roster. Would this be all 13 with the incoming class as well?
Let me count.
Hey, I was going to say,
thank you for
very
Sarah,
close.
because Sarah puts the entire roster underneath her announcement articles, so I can actually count right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Boom.
Thank you, Sarah.
So we have a roster.
Thank you, Sarah, for listing out the entire roster underneath your articles. That really helps.
As always, thank you, Sarah, for any cliff notes we have on women's basketball. Because, you could try and scrounge for facts or just go to where they all are in one of her articles.
Yeah, she's very good at her job.
Indeed. So yeah, that rounds the roster out at transfer Shalexis Aaron, transfer Jayla Thornton, 2 guards coming in from USC and Howard respectively. Ebony Walker coming in as a junior from ASU, as mentioned. Tisha Hyman, who's currently a redshirt sophomore. Camila Cardoso, Priscilla Williams, who are both sophomores, returning. Hopefully Williams is back on the right side of health after that scary incident in the postseason. And Ava Irvin is the only other returning person who's a sophomore guard. And then you have the entire freshman class coming in. So we have 6 freshmen coming in. It's gonna be quite a run.
The team is going to be young and a little bit inexperienced, but like we said a lot of times with Syracuse sports in general, like there's a lot of upside there. Will they reach it? No idea. But man, the upside is there.
The upside is there, but as Steve said, there are 6 freshmen coming in, and I think, and I talked with Steve about this before the show, I think we have to spend a little bit of time discussing why there are 6 freshmen and all these transfers coming in. Because when you look at the transfers going out of the program, out of Q's program, and where they're ending up, that's concerning. Because I believe it's now at 5 transfers from Syracuse's program that went to opposing ACC schools. Emily Engsler and Kiara Lewis being the big ones that went to Louisville and Clemson respectively. And you usually don't see that in any sport. So to have that happen to Coach Q and the Syracuse women's team is still a bit concerning.
I don't love the look of it. And again, I'm going to use my therapy words here. I feel that there has been a lot of different things said about the way that Coach Q has decided to run his program. And in the case of Emily Engsler, we know that she and Q did not get along at the beginning of their relationship. That is both out there in the public domain and has been mentioned a bunch of times. I feel like that type of relationship might not be isolated. And in a year when many players were given the opportunity to move around, there were other coaches who had the opportunity and the gumption to say, hey, we know you're not happy. Why don't you make this move? And again, none of this is confirmed. There's a lot of speculation here, but Christian, to your point, like 5 is not an insignificant number. And the fact that they all went to a Power 5 team in the ACC, similar to what we've said about the men's program transfers. Like, it's not like they're going down to like the mid majors. It's not like they couldn't cut it at a Power 5 school and they need to go somewhere else smaller to get playing time. They're all going to Power 5 schools because they feel like that's the best fit for them, and they're getting scholarship offers from these schools. In general, it does seem like this year's team had a lot more issues underneath the surface than we were maybe led to believe.
Yeah, I mean, look at the men's basketball side also. I mean, yes, Kadari is going to Seton Hall, but Woody Duden's also going to Oklahoma State. So, like, I mean, it's one thing if, like, no offense to last year, but with Howard Washington going to South Alabama, Bryson Goodine going to Providence, and Jalen Carey going to Rhode Island, that's not at the same level as some of the transfers that we're seeing this year.
Yeah, it is. It's something. Yeah. On a more positive note, women's lacrosse won a game. Listen,
they
didn't just win a game, yeah.
Yeah, they
won all the games.
I was gonna say we keep joking about it, but like they're a freaking steamroller. Like they're just rolling through their season. Minus that blip against North Carolina, they have just continued to show that they're in a class of their own. It just so happens that there's another class above them, and it happens to be an ACC school. That being said, women's lacrosse won. They didn't just beat like, oh, here's a team. It was number 18 Louisville. So I don't know what else to say about this team at this point other than they're probably the best Syracuse program on the Hill right now. Like of this academic year, like the 2021 season, they're probably the best overall program.
That we've talked about, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't checked Kevin's Olympic sports update, but
I think maybe the only other one is track and field, maybe.
Softball?
Softball's actually
they're usually good.
Softball's
right?
actually softball's usually not that good, but they're over 500 for the first, I believe, sometime. It's like it's.
I'll take
like
the
like for softball that's pretty good, but I'd have to check with Kevin on track and field and cross country, but like for the woman,
I'm sure he'll yell at us for mentioning that.
But for women's lacrosse, I mean, yes, it was top 10 Louisville, but it was also at Louisville. So, like, that's pretty good when you have them play at Louisville. Now, if you want fun women's lacrosse, though, well, I talked a lot about the Tewaaraton Award with the men. And again, Syracuse and they just faced a Tewaaraton Award candidate in Chris Gray on North Carolina. On the women's side on that, the front runner for that award is Charlotte North. And she's on Boston College, who Syracuse closes out the season with. And that's gonna be fun TV to watch because Charlotte North is really, really good at women's lacrosse.
I appreciate any matchup with BC that adds a little bit of spice to the life of the the now defunct Orange Eagle.
Oh, what do you mean now defunct? It's just still sitting in the trophy case because. It is.
That,
Sean's just still sitting.
Does he have it buried under the zoo somewhere?
Actually,
right.
In the Chicago Eagle enclosure. That is the reality of it.
There we go.
It camouflages inside the enclosure.
Orange is the ultimate camouflage, said every hunter ever.
So we got sidetracked on this, but Women's Lax won 3 games this week against Albany, 16-6, and then the aforementioned Louisville, 19-5, and then 19-7. What?
Oh yeah, when I say that they steamroll, like this is a team playing a dynasty mode with the settings set on easy. Like it is,
and with the sliders turned up. I mean, that's a very important mode of the easy dynasty modes. As a person who did a lot of those when he was 10 years old, I mean, like I am an expert at turning the sliders up to create the ultimate dynasty on Madden.
Right, and then they ultimately got completely FIFA'd by UNC
Yes.
in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it tracks. This is an EA Sports season,
and I'm not going to say that like it's definite, But man, if the NCAA has any smarts about fixing their own tournament, you make sure that Syracuse and UNC are playing each other in the semifinals or the finals. Like, that needs to happen in order to guarantee that you get the best possible matchup in this sport for this postseason. But again,
Northwestern wants to yell at you.
I can deal with journalism nerds yelling at me. Okay, I went through 4 years of that at Syracuse. I can handle that. Speaking of journalism nerds, let's talk about advanced football metrics and projection systems.
There we go.
Not Bill C. All bow down to the altar of SP Plus. Football Power Index, SP Plus's distant cousin, who's now like somehow come back into the family due to familial relations.
Right. He showed back up for Thanksgiving last year.
He's the guy. He's the guy that took advantage of the one-time transfer rule.
That was really well done. Well done.
Well, Mr. Slingring over here has to bring it back to the transfer portal, so
he does. And
I blame myself being on Twitter too much.
Twitter,
even though it's usually Dan who finds it, and then I'm like, okay, fine.
I swear to God, every time Dan posts something, it'll be like 10 minutes after, and I'm just like, oh, I should put this in the. Never mind. Dan's already got it in the Slack.
I do appreciate that the best part about it is that the dynamic has been sealed. Like the dynamic, like this is just the dynamic from here on out, and it will not change. Football projections, football index, it's fine. It's not the best metric that's out there. It's definitely not the worst out there. We can all agree on that one. They project Syracuse at 4-8. So before we talk about what 4-8 means, I feel that 4-8 is probably the low end of the median of what this team can expect, because both of you are very smart here. For everybody else who might not necessarily be up on like football, college football projections and stuff, typically the previous season's performance is what impacts these projections, and Syracuse making a 3-win improvement on the last season would be big. So while 4-8 might not be great, getting a 3-win improvement out of a projection system is not something to sneeze at. That being said, I feel like we're in the position where everyone is underestimating Syracuse because of how bad last year was, and they're not properly looking at what Syracuse is returning to the table. Steve, we'll start with you on this, because I feel like this ultimately comes down to the offensive line play.
It always does. I'm with you on the gut feeling of 4-8 being the, I don't want to say floor, but like the likely low end of the prediction spectrum. As you mentioned, everything's based on returners and past performances, and we literally just lost our entire secondary. Thankfully, half of them, as dumb as it sounds, thankfully half of them didn't play half of last year so that other guys got experience. It's like that catch-22 of I would have loved to have Cisco and Trill playing, but at the same time, because they didn't, were not as completely housed this year. From a rebuilt offense standpoint, you have an actual QB competition. You have a significant, and I'm going to say significant, improvement at the offensive line position. You have Rhino back in a slot where he is going to do us the most good on the offense, be it as a blocking tight end or in that fullback slot. Who knows what happens out wide? That's still kind of a question mark. I think a lot of that adds up to an improved offense. On defense, is what it is. We have the same defensive line who, it's not like they can get worse. So, I mean, technically they could, but you have 3 either super senior or super seniors coming back to man that defensive front. And another year in Tony White's system with a true off season is not going to make them a worse unit. Same thing with a young linebacking core and a young DB core. You give them an off season and a full training regimen in Tony White's system for another year, and I think things are turning up Millhouse. It's a weird feeling from a 1-10 team, but I don't know. And this is all with a giant grain of salt because nobody has seen a thing about the spring season. So we're all just kind of rolling the dice on this stuff, but that's my rationale.
It's gonna be tough, but because
Yeah.
I feel like as I've gone to Syracuse and entangled myself with the media more, I feel like I've gotten more and more pessimistic, and I'm not sure if that's just me being Syracuse or not. But okay, I'm getting
Nope.
the
One of
affirmation
us.
nods.
Yeah,
Okay,
no.
great, because I'm at the point where I think two, maybe three, more so three than two is the floor for the wins here because I just don't see like yes there's some new faces and yes there's some experience. I just don't know how much that improves the team that much because it's so unproven. Like we just don't know, and if we don't know, like it's usually getting an indication that like it's going to be a bumpy ride trying to figure out like what exactly the identity of this team is going to be, especially when you have uncertainty at wide receiver, uncertainty at offensive line, and as and really uncertainty in the secondary also because I mean like even though all those guys got experience, if how valuable that experience was when everyone was just getting beat up is still a question. It's tough to say where like like I know fans want 4 wins, 4 or 5 wins. I mean, no, fans want 7 wins. And let's be honest, but like at this point, the realistic fan expectation is 4 or 5 wins. But to me, I'm actually seeing like it could be 2 or 3, just because of how inexperienced like this team is as a team.
The,
Yeah.
I think to your point, Christian, I think 2 wins is the floor for this team because if you're looking at the schedule, Albany is the only guaranteed win on the schedule. The rest of the non-conference games aren't like uh,
Yeah, and you say Albany is a guaranteed win, but I'm still scarred by 2014. So
I'm not going to take that away from you. I just that's also fair. So pretending that Albany is a guaranteed win, the getting Rutgers and Liberty at home are probably good for a split. So that's where I'm coming through with like the 2 win floor. With at Ohio's a really good program. They have a really good. They're a really good program in the sense that they're consistent and they constantly outperform what they should be. So like that's the type of team that has typically given Syracuse struggles in the past. And they're also a MAC program that's familiar with the Dino Babers style, so it's not as if they're going to like be blindsided by a team that's going to come in and try to run a spread hurry up. Um, but my I'm also with you on the sense that I think getting 7 wins out of this team is going to be man, things have to go exactly right. Like that is just too much. But I think there's a path for 6. And again, a lot of that hinges on the first 2 games here, which I really hate saying. But like you got to go into that, got to find a way to win on the road against Ohio, and then you come back home to Rutgers and you take care of business against Rutgers. And if you start 2-0, you get the 3rd win against Albany. Hopefully that gives you enough momentum to take care of a Liberty team that is returning a lot of good production. It's predominantly in one single player that they're returning production, uh, but you're then able to say, okay, we can go through the rest of ACC play, and if we just beat two of Wake Forest, Boston College, Pittsburgh at home, like that gets us to a bowl game. And again, I don't love that scenario because that scenario is already probably in like the 30th percentile in terms of like actually coming to fruition, but it's far more likely of a path than we've seen in other years. And Steve, you and I go on this every single year that the S&P projections come out, and Matt Glod puts out his calculator of that he does in a spreadsheet, and like you and I play with that thing until it almost breaks. But I feel like this year again, there's a path, and I don't like that there's only one path, but it is there, and it's not one that is necessarily hard. God damn it! I just realized what I did there.
What's 13 factorial, because that's how many possibilities it is. I'll just let you guys do the math for that.
So yeah, I think this is time to now mention the Marvel spin-off podcast. No.
What's in the box? I mean, what's in the damn box? I tried to get that answer on Reddit. I have no idea what's in the damn box.
Nor should you know, Christian. Nor should you know.
Andy, tell me. You have the insider information.
Well, go read the comic. You'll figure it out.
Yeah, true.
You look at the rest of the schedule. I mean, heading down to Florida State, who's starting to put out the trash can fire that's been burning for the last couple of years to a degree. Home against Clemson is home against Clemson. Like, whatever. At Virginia Tech is not phenomenal. At Louisville, also not phenomenal. At NC State, also not phenomenal. So, yeah, we're talking, Stephen Strange had it right. There is one possibility.
You mentioned the Florida State trash fire, and I can only just go back to the picture that the amazing graphic they put up to do something with Martin Luther King, like just that graphic, like that just simplified the trash fire. That
they are.
Yeah.
Again, I think that this is going to be. I really wish we had some spring footage. I know that they put up an article that really didn't say a whole lot.
Can we talk about that for a sec? Like, John put out a great article on it, and we mentioned it a couple of times, tongue-in-cheek in the Slack. But now that it was out there, now that Brent Axe talked about it on his radio show, like, the amount of media coverage that Syracuse football not only has given themselves, but has allowed the media itself to put out, has been disappointing this offseason. And especially, like, as we've said, this is a team that's trying to come back from a 1-10 season. You need to do something in order to give the fans hope and give them a reason other than, pretty shiny new dome, to come and fill their seats into the dome back in September. And not doing things to get fans into the seats after a 1-10 season is not great.
No. So, I mean, we've been harping on it for years. Like you said, John put out that piece, and it's like, guys, do something. Anything. It's like it's like the old poking the dead thing with the stick. Like, hey, come on, do something.
And
that's about
as much as people don't want to admit it, especially with Syracuse, football makes the majority of the money in college sports, and it's not different in Syracuse. Like, the majority of the revenue in the athletics program is going to come from the football team, and if you don't put in the time and the effort to grow that source of revenue, Syracuse athletics as a whole is not going to benefit. It starts with your football program,
right?
Yeah, as much as nobody wants to hear it.
Especially in Syracuse, where basketball is just so overwhelming. Like, that's an undeniable truth about college sports. You need to be a major blue blood like Duke, North Carolina, and Kentucky to have that overwhelming college basketball revenue advantage. And even with those programs, it's not by much, if at all.
Well, those programs also recruit 5-star talent and win regular season games. So, obviously, this year was an exception for 2 out of those 3, but just would like to point out that more times than not, they're ranked in the top 25 for most of the season. So
that's true. But again, like, even with that, like, Kentucky's still an SEC school. UNC's been trending upwards in football, so you imagine those, like, revenue sources go up as well. So, like,
we've seen other SEC schools use football money to invest in the basketball program and turn the basketball program good. Like you do not take a good basketball program and funnel that money into a good football program. You can take a mediocre football program, reinvest in basketball, and make basketball good, or you take a good, just great football program and you can, by sheer force of the money cannon, make basketball good, as we saw with Alabama this year, as we've seen with a lot of the SEC, as we saw with the Pac-12. Like, for all the Pac-12 jokes that have been out there, when was the Pac-12 a basketball powerhouse? They weren't until the football money started coming in. Like, it's really unfortunate that Syracuse still continues to be the last person to figure this out. We were the last person to figure this out in conference realignment. We're currently the last people to kind of figure this out when it comes to the marketing stuff. But yeah, Christian, to your point, like, this is a 1-10 team. Like, you, me, and Steve are going to be here talking about football because we like football. Not everybody else is going to have that same amount of passion. And we're not going to be in a situation where just because Syracuse is bad, they're going to have financial success. We are not a European Super League here. Steve, I queued that up right on a fucking tee for you.
Yes! Perfect.
Bravo. So, Syracuse is not one of the top 12 teams in Europe, or however many they're going to go with for this latest iteration of the dumbest league.
Syracuse the Tottenham?
The dumbest idea.
Is Syracuse the Tottenham of the European Super League?
At this point, yeah, they're not the Arsenal, so they're way ahead of Arsenal.
There's a great GIF I saw on Twitter that showed that was simply titled "When Arsenal win the Europa League, but then realized they can't play in the competition they qualified for in the next year." It was people cheering, and then one guy just going like, "Wait, what does this actually mean?"
So yeah, if any soccer fans, look up what's going on with this European Super League. It's a really dumb idea. They've been tossing it around for years. Hopefully it gets knocked down again. Unfortunately, it looks like it has more steam this time. Whatever. We can figure that out. Some of these guys may or may not, or that we're going to talk about, may or may not have a chance to play in said competition that may happen. So, without further ado, the MLS season kicked off this week. It did kick off this year also. And there are currently 6 former Syracuse players on the rosters. Miles Robinson at Atlanta United, Mo Adams also at Atlanta United, Alex Bono at Toronto FC, Kamal Miller at the artist formerly known as the Montreal Impact, currently Club de Football Montreal.
You have to say that with a French accent, like it doesn't sound like.
Yeah, I got nothing. Ryan Raposo with Vancouver and Taijon Buchanan with the New England Revolution. Also of note, Luther Archimedes and Sandra Norheim were both drafted this year. However, neither are shown on the current rosters. I'm assuming Archimedes will end up with Red Bull 2 this year and work his way in. And same thing with Sandra. I'm not sure who Nashville's USL affiliate is, but same kind of concept there. But with the guys that are playing, a bunch of them saw action this weekend. Atlanta United opened up with a 0-0 draw against Orlando City. Miles featured as the kind of ball-playing center back. He looked fine, looked good. I mean, he's always going to put in a shift. He's one of the guys that's getting a bunch of looks from Europe as well. Also, I failed to note this, and I am kicking myself for not writing up when at the end of January he became the first that I could find former Syracuse player to score in a U.S. national team strip.
That is good for him. Wow.
Yeah, he netted the what I believe to be the first, unless there's something in the long past, the first goal for a former Syracuse Orangeman in the U.S. national team. However, Patrice Bernier, who was a former midfielder for the Orange, did net 2 for the Canadian national team back in the day. So he's not the first international, but he is, to my knowledge, the first modern U.S. international.
Well, I was going to say, like, the
score.
Syracuse tradition of good Canadians continuing with Taijon Buchanan, who, out of all the players mentioned, I know that Alex Bono has been, like, the longest pedigree. Robinson is probably the highest current player in terms of actual standing with his national team. Taijon towards the end of last year, like he had a tremendous back half where he basically cemented himself
Yep.
as a New England Revolution regular, and he got the start for the Revolution's season opener. He didn't score, but
He did have an assist.
I think it's fantastic that Taijon has turned himself into in a league where they primarily import their attacking talent. Like that is the key to success if you're an MLS team, is that you find attacking to other countries either in a DP or in a designated player who you pay a ton of money to, or you import from Latin America. Taijon has basically turned himself into a player of that quality, which is fantastic.
Well, Steve, you'll know this. Is Taijon still going down the right-sided Alphonso Davies route, where he was a former attackman but now is playing right back for New England?
So yes and no. Taijon, weirdly, in Bruce Arena's wonderful 4-4-2 antiquated system.
Oh, right, it's Bruce Arena, right.
He actually started on the left this game, but in the middle of the first half, late of the first half, he swapped wings with Carlos Gil and looked a completely different player on the right. That said, he also is playing more of a midfield type role, although he's hugging the touchline like a winger would. The other thing of note, he ended up dropping an assist, as I mentioned, on I think the first Revolution goal, and then was subbed off in the 60th minute. But I noticed over on the Smoking Musket, who is the Revs SB Nation site, that apparently Mr. Buchanan is getting a good bit of looks on the European side. So apparently Juve, Sporting Lisbon, and a couple others have been looking, like poking around to kind of do, like you mentioned,
European Super League.
Right. That's why I was saying there's some chance that some of these guys may end up in that spot. But they're looking at doing the Alphonso Davies.
The unlikely
like
North American duo at Juve, Weston McKennie and Taijon Buchanan.
Oh god, that would be absolutely amazing.
A duo.
But yeah,
a duo that we didn't know we needed, but now we desperately do.
Right. You started with Sporting. You said Sporting Lisbon. I was like, okay, that tracks. Where's the German team? Oh no, we're just gonna drop Juve. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, to be fair to Taijon, he's gotten some pretty good run from what I know with the under-23 Canadian team as well. And I mean, so, I mean, Kyle Larin turned that into a European contract. I mean, even though it was for Turkey, but still the same thing.
Yeah, but I mean, Besiktas isn't something to
exactly
shake a stick at. So, they apparently want to pull the Davies with them. So all Canadian attackers just turn into fullbacks
and then turn back into attackers when they play for the national team.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, Taijon and Davies will be playing left back and right back in Europe, and then play left wing and right wing for.
So that means when Juve plays Bayern in the Super League, it'll be Davies running at.
Yeah, they'll be running.
They'll be running at each other because they'll be on the same flank. Yep. That's good.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, Taijon's looking up apparently. Ryan Raposo is not currently. He's probably going to end up as a in the 23 for Vancouver, in and out of the 18. He didn't get the start tonight. I don't think he's on the bench tonight. They're playing at 10, so the roster or lineups just dropped, and I didn't pull them up. But the other of notes were Kamal Miller starting on his first game with Montreal. Looked fine. They ended up beating Alex Bono's Toronto FC 4-2. So Bono didn't have a great day in goal, but I think he was hung out to dry a little bit. So yeah, he did have a really good couple of looks in the CONCACAF Champions League. So we'll see where that goes, whether or not he can hold off Quentin Westberg and hold on to that spot, or if he's going to end up back at as the backup in Toronto. The only other player that is on an active roster would be Mo Adams, who I mentioned was with Atlanta. He's, I think, still recovering from off-season sports hernia surgery. Oh. So we'll see where that goes. And I am a sucker for a number 6. So I wish him the best.
Yeah, good.
I mean, it's always fun to hear Ian McIntyre yelling at his number 6 during every soccer game. Like, no matter who it is. I mean, he's usually used to passing and he is there, but like Max always yelling at his 6. It's just so funny.
Yep,
love that, man.
Although I can say my favorite name for Mac to ever yell had to have been Ryan Raposa.
Yeah.
There was just something about the way he enunciated that was just great every time.
Future guest of the stream, Coach Mac, because it will happen at some point. I don't know when.
That's how we know we've made it. That's how we know we've made it.
Somehow, we have gone another hour-long week. Those who say that nothing happened in Syracuse sports, I turn to the show and say something happened in Syracuse sports. We talked about it. And we will be back here again next week at 8 p.m. Eastern. We will be every Sunday through the off season, through the regular season, through whatever season it may be. We will be here on the Troy Nunes is an Absolute Magician YouTube channel doing this live stream on Sunday nights. Hit the like button, smash that subscribe button. Continue to follow us, retweet this out, post this on Instagram, on Snapchat, on the TikToks. I don't really know what that is, but I'm going to be old here for a second and just say do it. Christian, did I get all the things?
And if you're subscribed, ring the notification bell so that you're notified whenever we go live and upload a video.
There we go. Christian, our resident bottom end of the millennial Gen Zer who helps keeps us honest.
I'm at the very tip of the line because I think anyone below my age are the people who understand TikTok, and my age and above are the people who don't understand TikTok.
That's
understandable.
So that's where we all are.
I'm glad we're all on that side.
So even though I'm the young guy, I'm not that young. I still don't understand TikTok.
That is a great place to end it, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you again, Steve, for putting together this show. Thank you, Christian, for joining us and explaining lax. Thank you all for listening. Go Orange.
Go Orange.
Go Orange.